Hello, Nick. Do you know this tune?
Our friend Brian Pentland, Dr. Decade.
Absolutely. And this always signals award season, holiday season, end of year. The very, very famous, the institutional prodigy that has become the this IS Research Podcast Awards. And they're a big thing, as you know, for our audience.
Oh, yeah, sure. They are a big thing, and we make up different awards each year. And yeah, so last year we made up a couple of awards. This year we have a new award name. But I think what we should do is we have three awards this year. Let's make this the titles of our three awards going forward. Shouldn't we standardize?
Well, I don't know. I kind of like, first of all, we have two that we always have, right? The Trailblazer Award and the Innovative Method Award. But then we just hand out awards to random awards to random papers that we like this year. But yeah, so people, this is the end of the year. This is our final podcast for the year. It's when you listen to this, ISIS will be over. You'll hopefully be back in time for the Christmas season. And of course, we're also gonna take a break. And Nick, it reminded me, we do this every year. Last year, we actually closed by asking, what's your plan for 2023? And I remember you saying that you wanted to make 2023 the year of experiments. Did that ever
Hmm.
happen?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I did. Well, I guess not as many as I would have liked, but yeah, what I'm doing is with our PhD students, I run this philosophy of science seminar, and I have them. So first of all, I have one experiment accepted now at
Hey,
MIS
congrats.
Quarterly. So the
What?
one I
Wow,
presented
awesome.
when I was at Hamburg, uh, and then yeah, I've got a couple other in the cooking, and then with our PhD students, we that's how I teach them science. I figure experiments are the fundamental way of thinking about science in a
Well,
sense,
it's
right?
the
You
scientific method, isn't it? Even for people like us, it is. Yeah.
So if you're going to do econometric analysis, right? It's attempting to do an experiment when you don't have an experiment. That's what econometrics is. Qualitative, right? If you look at Yin's uh, ideas on qualitative anyway, he kind of thought of each case as an experiment, right? Uh, Structural equation modeling. Let's say you're going to do surveys, right? A lot of the words you use, like control and come from that you can understand it, I think, more easily if you come from experiments. So I think you teach an experiment. We do these online, but this is one thing, and I wonder, what's your opinion on this? We're using prolific. In the old days, you would have used mturk, right? You have all these mturkers, they would fill it out, and now we're using prolific, and we give them a little scenario usually, and then we have them pick something in the scenario, right? uh, and then we ask them a bunch of different questions about their personality type and whatever else, right?
No.
Is it real? Like, do you think they're actually like prolific? You pay a little more. That it's not just mturk, but really, could you imagine like people going through these surveys? And I don't know. I love the opportunity, but it seems so. I don't know.
So my view on this, I think we need to talk about this in a separate experimentation episode, and we should do one. But my take on this is this: I don't like it at all. I never liked the mturk version, and I don't like the prolific version because it's exactly how you say. Like I picture someone that picked the job that at that moment for dynamic pricing reason paid the most, and then said, "Yeah, sure, I'll meet the criteria. Let's fill out whatever and answer whatever questions on a scenario." So when I do experiments, I'd rather go back into the lab and take some 22-year-old undergrad and then do an experiment on something that a 22-year undergrad at least can say. Because to me, experimentation, that method is all about internal validity and control, like an entirely controllable setting. And if I want to do that, then I don't like the setting that I don't even know who my participants are. Like
Yeah.
that kind of violates the entire idea to me. Like, this is just my personal viewpoint. And as a person doing the research, not even as an editor, I've accepted papers that use prolific. It's completely standard. All that is fine. I'm just saying, like, I personally don't like it because if I want to do an experiment, I want to do the real thing in a way. And I don't think it is, to be honest,
Yeah.
in the same way, the same reason I don't like natural experiments either. Because to me, natural experiments are not experiments, you know?
Oh, geez. So you don't like scholars? Well, all right. So you're a bit of a difficult person. I think that the every research is flawed. We're moving things. I don't have this grand view that every bit of research is perfect and that we have to do these unassailable. If you have a really humble view of research, that each bit of research is a minor step and you can't really say anything from one research project. You need to run a bunch of them. There has to be, we've talked about it, the bricks in the wall. You have to build this edifice of knowledge, and you do it with multiple experiments in different contexts, right? So if each study is just one little assertion with some evidence, and then you add studies, then I'm fine with it. And that's the way I look at scholarship. And I think the problem is when people think that, oh, your whatever inference you make has to be unassailable, or else it's almost this fetish for perfection. If your fetish is for perfection, you're going to get really lame outcomes, right? Really unoriginal. So I'm fine with prolific. I'm fine with field. I'm fine with anything that's kind of clever and creative. What I think the issue would be is it's not either students or prolific. It's okay, someone did a prolific study, so you do a student study, someone else do a different set of students, someone else maybe find a corporation actually, and then after there are 6, 7, 8 studies published, now you can say something.
Yeah. So, okay. So I that I don't disagree with what you said. It's just when I say that, first of all, as a reviewer, as an editor, I'm completely fine with them. I never looked at them saying, oh, this is not good scholarship or not as good as it should be or whatever. I'm just saying, and this is my view. I'm just saying that I don't think we have a research question problem. We have a selection problem. Like I can study many, many different things. Which of them do I pick? And then I look really closely at topic, the approach that is available to me or that is feasible or whatever. And then very often I don't do experiments if they involve prolific and or MTurk, right? Because I would love to do one if I could do it in a firm, like a field experiment, and if depending on the topic, individual level, whatever cognitive stuff, if that makes sense, I'll do it with students. That's the kind of stuff that I would choose to do. This is not to say that I don't like it, but and final point. The best studies that I've seen at the moment are the ones that do multiple experiments in one paper. And some of them do really cool stuff. They do one with, one in the field, one with professional workers, and then a third one on some mechanism with prolific or with a bunch of undergrads or whatever. That's the way to go, right? Because that is a really robust set of evidence that you accrue.
Yeah, you see that with some econometric studies lately. They'll do that, and then to test the mechanism, they'll do a quick experiment of some sort.
Exactly.
So wait, what was your 2023 goal last year? If you went back,
I think I talked about that I loved simulations, right? Simulations.
So did you do any?
Well, I was working on a simulation paper late last year, and we are still working. Literally, I worked on this literally this morning, but it's round 4. It's past the big hurdles. I'm pretty sure that our editors are listening to this at the moment, but I think it's pretty close. It's pretty close. It's really cool. I'm looking forward to it coming out. We're really right now we're just polishing sentences, really. So
you've published the one simulation paper, right? In OrgSci. Did you publish any others other than that?
Well, that's what I mean. Like this is the one that I talked about last year, and this is very close to being published. It's around 4 or 5 now. This is gonna come out. This is an NK model, right? Landscape model simulation, really cool. And based on that, I already have the idea for the next one that I want to do with that type of simulation. So, and I've handled a few as editors. I accepted a nice simulation paper this year, and I have 2 or 3 more that I'm handling. So yeah, this was my year of simulation in a way.
Good. So what about next year? What's it going to be for 2024?
You know what? Geez, I don't know.
So with me in a couple podcast episodes ago, you
have to write your book, and you promised me.
Yeah. So I got to start some kind of book.
You have to start a book. I'm firming up to the idea of writing a solo authored paper. Now, this is a big call now. Maybe I'm not doing it completely by myself. Yeah. Maybe I'm asking, one person or something, but I can't put it into words, but I have 1 or 2 ideas that I think, I could push, like not as a someone in Jan, but as a Jan, just Jan.
Well, you and I, we emailed about it. We shouldn't say what it is, but you and I have that conceptual paper we're going to do together this year.
Yeah, that could be something, right? But enough about us. Let's talk awards, right? This is award season, and we have 3 of them. We have the Trailblazing Research Award, which we usually hand out to to highlight a paper that really opens up a new area of inquiry, really gets the research going, has nice new conceptual ideas. Then we have an Innovative Method Award, which actually does something new in terms of procedures. And this year we want to do an Elegant Scholarship Award. Now that was your idea, the Elegant Scholarship Award.
Yeah. And the reason we did that is because sometimes there are just really cool papers that maybe don't fit into the first two categories. So it's
Yeah,
like, what do we
but they're
call
still
that?
cool. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's start with trailblazing. Trailblazing is always one of our favorites. So we had, and just to let people know the method, we essentially send an email out to a bunch of people. So all our friends and people we respect and admire, and ask them, all right, what paper did you like this year? And here's the deal. They sent us a lot of papers that are like forthcoming, for example, and accepted, but they're not published yet. And
Yeah,
we decided we're only going to talk about those that are actually published in the journals in 2023.
that's right.
So we looked at them. You made us a little Dropbox folder. You gave us a spreadsheet. We read them. Man, it's a difficult process, this picking a favorite paper. But then we ended up with a handful of Trailblazers, right? Where we're like, okay, so wait, let's, before we give the award, because we agreed on the one that we want to give the Trailblazer award. What was one? Just give me one out of the ones that stands out that of the others that were.
Well, I'm gonna give you one because it's close to an area that I'm interested in this sustainability and responsibility of IS topic area. I'm gonna mention one that is by my old colleague in Cologne, actually, my ex-colleague, I should say, Wolf Ketter, and one of his students and one of his collaborators, Carsten Schröer and
Mhm.
Valoriana. They wrote a paper on to motivate IS research on smart, sustainable mobility. And this
Mhm.
is really, like, I know their research, Wolf has been doing research on this for a decade. And I think this is the type of green IS, sustainability IS type of research that everyone should be doing. They are providing very theoretical and practical solutions that literally make the world better. Yeah. Wolf always says, like, doing good by doing well, right? So
Mhm.
balancing sustainability and economic imperatives, for example, for providers. And they're really showing how you can have something like a sustainable mobility solution for freaking continents, like for the US,
Yeah.
for Europe, for countries. It's really, really cool.
So
And they wrote a framework where they basically say, look, everyone else is doing a lot of research here. IS is not. And then they give research
mhm.
opportunities in this space. And they also talk about, which I also like, they talk about some of the barriers to entering this research for IS scholarship. So it's a great paper. It's certainly worth mentioning.
Yeah. So, and if you're going to do research on, say, mobility, smart mobility, we don't have a lot of those, although we do in IS, but sustainability, this offers a framework upon which future research can build, right?
That's
So,
right.
so there's one that's similar that I think it's the paper by Travis Green, Galit Shmuley, and Suma Ray. It's in JAIS, Taking the Person Seriously, Ethically Aware IS Research and Reinforcement in the Era of Reinforcement Learning. So I like this paper. I thought it was a couple of things. The first is we don't have a lot of conceptual papers about reinforcement learning. So I think this is really cool because we should be thinking about reinforcement learning and its ramifications, right? So this is about intense personalization. It's kind of an ethical framework they lay out. I think it's a really good foundation for, we should be doing research in the wild on reinforcement learning and its impacts on humans and that sort of thing. And I thought this paper was like a nice start, kind of laying out that world. But Wrecker, what paper did we pick as the trailblazing winner?
Well, this is a trailblazing winner that I've been highlighting before, and I shouldn't even be talking about it because I was an editor on this paper. And moreover, the first time I ever heard about this work was in 2018 because it was submitted to a track I was chairing for ISIS. And back then it was called Time as a Service, White Rabbit at CERN. And it ended up,
Mm-hmm.
this year being published. It's on open source hardware at freaking CERN,
Yeah,
the scientific institute of our planet where all the cool stuff and the Higgs boson and all that stuff is being researched. And then they picked this topic of open source hardware, not software. Right. And
right.
they theorize about it really, really nicely. It's by Laia Puyol Prigo and Jonathan Wareham from Barcelona. And very, very sad note, Laia
Yeah.
passed away this year.
Oh no,
Yeah, she
I
did.
did not know that.
Well, yeah, she
Uh,
did. It's people, if you're listening to this, stop listening, go and hug your loved ones. Laia was just literally out of thin air, was taken, out of a family in summer on a summer holiday of all things this summer. So it's a real shocker. for everyone anyway. But her work has been great, and this has been one of her key pieces of work from her PhD. She was studying, information systems and digital technology at CERN with the scientists, and this is one of the key papers that she wrote on open source hardware. It's fantastic.
Oh, wow. I did not know that she passed. Yeah, so when we looked at the various papers, it's a tragedy.
It is a tragedy.
You didn't tell me this. You have to tell me these things off air. Yeah. Anyway, so from bits to atoms, Priego and Wareham. And yeah, this of the papers that we looked at, I brought it up to you. You didn't even bring it up to me, and we both agreed. It does some incredible things. I think the open source hardware as well as open source software, and the relationship. I think the thing that really attracted me to the paper, other than its many, it's trailblazing in the sense of, it's focusing on hardware. But to me, the trailblazing element was the deep thinking about malleability.
Yeah,
In the
agree.
end, I thought this was an interesting construct. It's a construct we think of when we think of software, certainly. And, they were relating malleability to the hybridity, how when systems are more or less hybrid. Really cool.
Yeah, really cool.
And also relating it's not the same thing as modularity, right? So they were relating it there. So I thought this construct of malleability was brand new, super interesting, and super important. And to me, the thing that struck me as the trailblazing element is, sure, there are a lot of different elements in this paper, but that malleability construct and its relationship to things like modularity and hybridity, to me, was truly the trailblazing aspect of that paper.
And like they got this really beautiful section at the very end, in implication section. So if people want to know how to write an implication section, they got this section where they only talk about the implications of malleability for other forms of organizing. Now, in their paper, they relate some of these aspects to development, right? How do they build these things? Which I always liked. I always loved the fact that this is a very serious study of how technology comes into being. We always take them for granted. So I always love that, especially technology that is not as simple as a piece of software, right? They talk about these switches and the gateways and all these sorts of things. But they have a really nice section where they explore wider and broader implication of malleability for organizing. So that is trailblazing in the sense you can start your own research program now. What I always loved about the fact this paper is that it takes the physical stability of technology quite seriously, right? At a point where we all talk about the digital and the generative and the modularity and whatever else, and they look, well, some of that is still quite right material. It's embodied and so forth, right? What Yanis said is not always change that's important. Stability is also important. Anyway, so I always like this attention. It's really thorough in that regard. All right, so that's our Trailblazer Award for this year, right? Rightfully so.
That's the Trailblazer Award. So how about let's do the Innovative Method Award. And I always like this because I always think that, innovative methods, we're IS, information systems, and we can understand we're necessarily cross-disciplinary. We're a little more flexible. We're not doctrinaire, right? And so we can do some interesting things with methods that maybe some other fields can't get away with.
Right. And here again, you actually brought up a candidate that I hadn't seen before, right? And maybe you want to start with that, right? Your second order.
We got a few, and this is a tough one because if you really do some digging, it's hard to find a method that in some form or another isn't already out there. We found a few with machine learning, and the fact is, you and I are probably not the right people to judge how innovative some of the machine learning papers are. So we probably didn't go that way, and we maybe could have. There was one that was this meta-analysis that I thought was kind of cool, and it was a second order meta-analysis.
Right.
So
Sam Zaza's paper.
Yeah, and I'm trying to. I didn't have it up.
No, it's by Sam Zaza, Damien Joseph, and Deb Armstrong on IT professionals. A meta-analysis, right? But a second order. So they do a normal meta-analysis and then kind of a meta-analysis of the meta-analysis. That's kind of cool, right? So I hadn't seen that before, to be honest.
And it's never happened in IS. So I thought that was a really cool approach. And the other thing that they do, so there's the second order meta-analysis, which is a meta-analysis of meta-analyses, I guess. But they looked at IT people and their turnover, and then they did the meta-analysis and then they looked at regular people, non-IT, and then made some comparisons to show that, you know, IT people aren't exactly the same as non-IT people, because of course there's tons of research out there on just humans in general and turnover. So anyway, I thought it was a cool method, but the one we again both freaking fell in love with and we're giving the award to
is I try to pronounce his name correctly. Arvind Saheim, Joseph Vitahayatil, Supra Saka, Shaoni Saka, and Niels Bjorn Andersen, value destruction in IT ecosystems. They did the unthinkable. They combined analytical modeling with interpretive case study research. Now that's like you know, back in the day we would say these are incommensurable paradigms, and they showed no, it's not. Yeah. Anyway, so no, this is a really cool mixed method study. They literally take an interpretive case study, explore firms that you know, where value co-destruction or value destruction happens in an ecosystems of multiple firms. And they, you know, classic case study research, and then they formalize all of that using analytical modeling and math. Now that is amazing, you know, like it's what a skill to have. The people that are good in this one thing are usually not good at the other. And even if you have a team of both, getting both of these languages together, interpretive research meets mathematical modeling, that's amazing. And I do think also the way that they report it, like doing it is one thing. I think also writing such a paper is also very, very difficult. And I think this is a really nice template paper. If you're interested in combining such traditions and wondering how the hell I'm going to put that into the 30 pages that I have, I think they found a really nice way of doing this, the reporting of such work, how to blend, you know, for example, like it's not the classical, here's my background, here's my method, here's my findings, right? So they weave method and findings together, and they basically go step by step. They got this nice figure of kind of going to and from like a zigzag line, and that's exactly how they do it. So I really like it for the innovative method. It's a very, very cool exemplar. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many things to like. So that zigzag line you mentioned, what's really cool about that zigzag line, there are a couple of things, is that they showed this iterative process, and much like, you know, an interpretive view of the world, they, you know, I guess interpretation does not mean you can't formalize your interpretation, right? And what they did is they kept showing that their interpretation breaks down and so they kept revising until, and then their stopping point was no apparent absurdities.
Exactly.
Which I love.
No more absurdities. That is such a better stopping line than your classical theoretical saturation, isn't it? Well, I didn't learn anything from my interview, so I stopped here. I still have a room full of absurdities, but no more absurdities. That's wonderful. Yeah, I like that too. I saw that as well.
So the stopping rule of no apparent absurdities is classic. That deserves an award all itself. It should be the best stopping rule award ever published award, right?
The best stopping rule award.
Yeah, so no apparent absurdities, I think, was excellent. I think this iterative process, it's incredibly honest, was excellent. As you said, the combination. The other thing, and I don't know if you know this, but it's kind of clever too, because if you look at a lot of our research, it's all about value creation, right? And if you look at Supra, he has a paper, I don't know, a decade ago on value creation in these platforms, these enterprise systems platforms. And what they're talking about here is value destruction. So it's like the other side. So it was kind of a fun little topic, but really the method is trail. I want to imitate this method somehow at some point in my career. And I think it's phenomenal. And what it is, here's the beauty of it. When you do qualitative interpretive work, a lot of what you're doing is very hand wavy a lot of times. The more interpretive, the more it's like I'm looking into my soul and I'm constructing. Formalizing your interpretations is kind of a cool idea, right? It's like, anyway.
No, I agree. Like, I fully agree, because normally I wouldn't put it like looking into the soul, but I would say a lot of interpretive research really ventures into this thick description. Yeah, or polyphonic representation, like this sort of like, hey, this is how this person saw the world, and this is how this other person saw the world. And you get these nice accounts of how everyone saw the world, and you're like, okay, that's great and nice to hear. Now what, right? And this is a way of really doing what even some of the interpretive scholars, what they want to do. They want to abstract and be able to generalize through formal concept. Well, what better way to do this than through math? Because the math gives you, you know, an equation that basically is a hypothesis, like this should happen under these and these circumstances, and the next person can go and test it. Like it's wonderful, and now invites incremental science to, you know, do the next step. It's really cool.
Agreed.
Right, that's 2 awards out of the way.
And our last award is our new one. And it's because I'll tell you this, of the papers that were recommended, and then some of the ones you and I found on our own, there's some beautiful research happening in our field. And I think we should talk about some of these. And we agreed on one because and I guess we'll talk about it, but let's talk about a couple of the others that were mentioned.
So one paper that was mentioned quite a lot, which I think is a good example of what you just said, is the paper by Daniel Fürstenau and a whole bunch of others. Hannes is on there, AB is on there. Who else is on there? Kai Schivina, Matthias Schulte-Althoff.
Yeah, it's on generativity.
Yeah, it's extended generativity. And I mentioned to you offline, I can't do this. Like, I can't do what they've done. It's really like some of the sophistication in analysis that we're seeing. It's just amazing, right? I mean, it really is. This is a very, very well done paper.
And conceptually, a lot of people just talk about generativity, very hand wavy, and they added some precision and some depth to the idea of generativity. So that was a good one. There are a couple other great ones. My colleague here, Yunsuk Sun, with his advisor Wonsuk Oh and Il Im, they have the first paper on smart speakers, right? So this is the voice. It's in MISQ, or the Voice of Commerce on smart speakers. It's a beautifully done paper. They get real corporate data, and they show that smart speakers actually do for
matter.
People who use them. Yeah, they matter, and they matter really significantly. And this is just a beautifully done study. We both like that one.
And I think, like, before we get to the winner in this elegant scholarship award, maybe that's the most important of the 3 awards, because what it showcases is that your regular paper, not a new method, not a new theory, not a new area of research, not a conversation starter, but what a scholarship apparently is really good at is picking up a conversation like the one on generativity and, following it up and incrementally building upon that through some really hardcore, really well done scholarship. Right, the first paper. What I really like about it is they take generativity, key concept from our own field, and they're saying, well, let's further this conversation, add nuance to it, explore the boundary conditions, figure out how it really works, and they do this not just theoretically, but really, very well done. I think that means our field is in a pretty good and healthy state.
Yeah. The other one, by the way, that we got a bunch of nominations for from our friends, and you and I both love this paper, is the Tawana and Safadi paper on atrophy.
Absolutely. Atrophy and degeneration. That is a cool paper, folks. You got to look at that. This has one of the biggest data sets I've seen in my life.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal data set. It's data. Yeah. All right.
Sorry.
I don't believe I'm. See, this is me. I'm very empathetic. I mirror people I talk to. So you just said data set, and I said data set. Who says data set?
Well, the Queen of England does, or she used to anyway.
No, it's data. All right. So but anyway, it's beautiful, right? There's conceptualization, which of course you would expect from Amrit and Hani. These are 2 brilliant people around nominal. They're distinguishing technical debt from generativity and code rot with nominologically upstream and downstream. And I mean, it's just beautifully written. The analysis is crazy. It's wonderful. So.
That is a great paper.
It's hard to pick. Really, all of these papers are so good, but we did pick one as the winner. And the one that we picked was do you want to, I'll name it. It's Yu Kai Lin and Arun Rai. They have this paper, The Scope of Software Patent Protection in the Digital Age, Evidence from Alice. And I guess you and I both decided, all right, we're just going to give this to the elegant because, first of all, it's just beautifully written. It's incredibly elegant. And it's really cool how they pick a Supreme Court decision, right?
Absolutely. How good is that?
And use that as the, all right, what's the impact on software patenting, right?
Yeah, I really like this too. I mean, there's so many nice things about it. I mean, they pick a topic of IS meets legal research, right? Mm-hmm. I just love that. They have this really thorough review of the patent data, stream in IS and everywhere else. They problematize really well. You know what I loved about how they problematized? I've done, as I mentioned this a little bit. We wrote a paper on patent data this year. As a proxy for innovations, whatever. And as I was getting into this patent data, man, patents are so weird. You know what? The patent descriptions always say something like, a system that generates output based on input. That's the description of the patent. It says nothing at all. So I talked to a patent lawyer friend of mine. It's like, what the hell is going on with these patents? And he confirmed this. Anyway, so this is part of the theorizing even here in this paper. When they talk about how the scope of a patent is more narrow or not, I just love that bit. Yeah, it's a very, very nice paper.
And they talk about history of patent rulings. They get into and conceptualize this Alice ruling, and I don't claim to know much about it. They're talking about software patents themselves, which I think are super important to distinguish software patents from other sorts of patents. So there's so many things. I mean, this paper's in some ways a trailblazer. It's a really unique paper. You don't find too many of these. Of course, the empirics are beautiful. It's classic difference in difference kind of.
Yeah, but really powerful one, right? They got this really nice. They basically treat the Supreme Court ruling as a natural experiment, and they got this wonderful figure that shows like how after the ruling, this one curve just drops to the bottom. It's really, really cool. And the analysis is really robust. Yeah, absolutely.
It's compelling evidence. It's not. Yeah, you're right. It's not the most innovative method, but it's elegantly done. Solidly, the class, right? So I don't know. We both liked it. We thought it was original, beautifully written, beautifully done, well researched, and it was hard to pick. That elegant research award was probably our most difficult one because we loved all of those papers, didn't we? So
we liked all of them. There's a few papers that were mentioned by several of our friends and colleagues as well, and that's what I mean. Like I think we're in a healthy state. Our field is doing okay. Like so if I look at some of the older debates, like do we have native theories? Do we have that anxiety syndrome? What about our rigor? If I look across the papers that we just looked at, 20 of them, fine scholarship, of course, but it's really fine scholarship. It's theoretically interesting. It's novel. It's relevant. It's timely even. And it's some of the procedures are pristine. I mean, pristine to me anyway. Like seriously, it's really hard to keep up with that. Don't you feel that sometimes? It's really hard to keep up with the methods.
It is. If you look at our 4 papers we just talked about for elegant scholarship, I mean, they have all the parts. They have conceptualization, but not just bullshit. Here's something, and here's my hypothesis. No, this was deep thinking. Deep research, whether it was on, atrophy, right, or patenting. I mean, this was solid research, solid conceptualization, original thinking, and then pristine empirics, and then a conclusion. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. If people want to see what good scholarship is, read it. And if you can't do it, I mean, join the club. Most of us are not going to do jobs. If we do, it's rare. Yeah.
If I look across our award winners and our runner-ups or honorable mentions or whatever, if you look at the author teams, they're very well constructed author teams. Like take Sam Zaza's paper. She works with Deb Armstrong and Damien Joseph. These are the 2 scholars on IT professionals. Like these are the 2 authorities, right? Hani Safadi and Amrit. I mean, Hani, he's the computational network analysis guy, right? It's really, really cleverly done. So I think this is what people are doing, or at least these papers, what they achieve is they get true experts, not people that have done this once.
Oh, no.
They get the real
so what
authorities.
You're saying is, if you're not one of these elite intellects, you're in trouble.
No, what I'm saying, no, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying, like at the top of the game, first of all, it's not a person's job; it's a team's job. And the team matters, is what I'm saying. And it makes a difference if the experts on something come together and write a paper on something because of the deep thinking involved. I do think so. Don't you think?
I don't know. Maybe.
Well, look at Wolf Ketter's paper. Like Wolf Ketter wrote a paper, we could say, well, it's a research agenda framework. Sure. Well, Wolf has been doing this for 20 years. He knows what he's talking about. Yeah, he's been consulting the World Health Organization and the COP, and the federal and state governments of multiple countries. He knows smart mobility, and I do think that shows. Yeah, and Supra is on this value destruction paper. He's on an analytical modeling paper. Well, he knows value creation. And of course, he knows the case study method, right?
A lot of these papers are kind of a mix between someone who's fairly recent, maybe their dissertation work, and then someone who's established. I think that's one model. I think the other model is the kind of Hani Safadi Amrit Tamana one, where they're both established and they're just brilliant and they work together there at Georgia. So if they decide they're going to do something empirical and really focus on it, it's going to be nice.
Well, I think the other takeaway for me is if you look at Amrit and Hani, they're not writing 20 papers a year. They're writing some big heavy hitters, right? And they say, let's do this and let's do it right. You're not going to do this analysis of millions of lines of codes and this deep thinking and this level of analysis that you see in this paper. This doesn't come overnight. This is going to take that has taken them years. It's only two people too, right? This is not the off the shelf type of research where you build a program and just execute and execute and execute. That's not that type of work. And on the other thing with the seniority, I don't know, right? If you look at the paper on extended generativity, Daniel, AB, Kai, Hannes, well, they're all basically assistant professors. Every single one of them. I think Matthias was a PhD student at the time. So, this is not the let's ask Varun Grover to help us write a paper kind of story. So I don't think this means that everyone should go and find a senior scholar to team up with. Does that help? Sure, it helps.
It can.
There
are tons of senior scholar papers that don't get published or aren't on our list. So I guess this is just, we're just talking about the really beautiful papers, and yeah, maybe getting someone with a little bit of experience helps.
I think it helps. It helps on two levels. And I do believe that by now. So the number one, avoiding the obvious mistakes. Like, a senior scholar looks at your paper and he sees some very basic obvious flaws that probably are hidden if you haven't seen, thousands of papers by now, like the obvious ones. And the second one is, I don't know what they call it, like the icing on the cake, the last 5%, the things that can get you the first revision instead of being rejected. And I'm not saying this for political or social capital. I'm meaning this for quality of writing, for some arguments that are, on that level where you say, like, this looks like this promise, this looks like these people can revise what otherwise looks too risky or too heavy or whatever. So I do think this sometimes helps just in terms of getting this extra 5% out of a paper and then maybe helping you through the first round where it really, really matters. Don't you think?
Yeah. Again, so I'm trying to think about this. I think it does. So let's look at Amrit. We should get him on next year. I wonder if he'll join us.
Good idea.
But I used to work with him, and I think meaning I was at University of Georgia together, and we always talked about potentially writing a paper. He's very disciplined in what he does. You can't just go up to him and be like, write a paper with me. You have to kind of earn his attention, and then and I think that's the issue, is that these really strong intellects like Hani and Amrit and maybe Arun Rai and some of the folks that are just next level intellects, you can't just go up to them and say, write a paper with me. Right? They probably won't, right? I would imagine. I don't know. And then a lot of times the senior folks who will write a paper with you are maybe not the ones that have that level of, so you'll get a paper, maybe it'll be solid, but it's not going to be this kind of paper. It's not going to be like a trailblazing award. It's not going to be the most elegant paper in the field. It'll be a nice paper, and so I think if you're junior and you're working with senior people, there are different categories of senior people. And I think that what I'm looking at from our award winners is that those really deep intellects do the beautiful papers. That doesn't mean that all senior people don't know how to do a good paper. It just means that there's a certain class of senior people that are like next level. I don't know. Is that?
Well, I guess it makes sense. My point was also to say that if I could choose to write 10 papers or one that gets this thisISresearch award, like the Trailblazers award, I'd pick that any day. I'd rather have one paper of the quality of, let's say, I don't know, any of these papers than 5 other ones. Seriously. But that too can change with time, with length of your career, or even stage of your career. I'm not saying that every PhD student needs to do this, right? Probably not. Like, learn the trade, get some papers out. Not every paper has or could be like that. It doesn't have to, right? So most of my papers are not, absolutely not. Hey, as we close, I wanted to mention one thing. So last year, one of our award winners last year was Carolina Selch, right? And I think it was Elena and Jason on bots.
Yep.
We picked it last year, didn't we? We picked it as
our best paper.
That was our best paper, and it so happened that this year MISQ gave its best paper award to that paper too. They're just totally
They're
copying that.
copying us. MASQ is copying us. Yeah,
Absolutely,
totally.
they are. All right, Nick, this is it, I think, right? We're gonna end this season now on a high note with a really beautiful scholarship, and then we'll take a break. And you convinced me that we keep on going, so we keep on going. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I figured. So this is what happened to our listeners: is that Wrecker about every
always in fall.
I don't know. Every couple of months, you sit there and go, well, we have to stop this. You're like the most anxiety-filled human being, right? It's like, and I know you love it. This is you created this thing. You love this thing. It's a service that so many people tell me that they appreciate that we do. As long as people like it and they enjoy it, and you and I can find interesting things to do, then let's just do it. Now, here's the deal. So you keep doing this, and then I keep having to be like, you want to keep doing it. You just have this anxiety, or I don't know what you have.
I need a stroke, like a pat on the back every now and then.
You do. You need affection. So what I do is I give you the affection, and then we keep doing it. Now, if one of these times I find that you do really want to, like I sense that you actually want to stop doing it, then we'll stop doing it, right? But well,
I told you what, it's a compensation mechanism, because I told you my friends don't cite my papers, they don't cherish or appreciate my intellect, so all I have left is a pat on the back for the podcast.
So I have to pat your back, and then we do it again. And I think what we're going to do in this next in the spring is we're going to, so we should, and anybody who has ideas of people we should bring on, so we should bring on Amrit Tawana, right? Because
absolutely.
We talked about it, and it's on the air, so if he doesn't come on, it's because he turned us down. But we'll try to get some other people and get their ideas on the future of IS research and what we're up to, and maybe some methods, maybe some stuff like that. So
sounds wonderful. And yes, you're probably right in your analysis of me. Thank you. Now that my soul is on the internet. And just in closing, we mentioned this a few times. We have our little Christmas tradition of giving each other a book. And Nick gave me a book, and my Christmas came early. And he talked about this on air, The Gospel of the Eels. And people, this book is amazing. I read it in one setting. I literally did. I started it. And I couldn't put it down, and my wife, like, was with her for a weekend, and I couldn't put it down, and she got so annoyed with me and the eels.
It's like, what are you doing? Why are you interested in eels?
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful book. Absolutely
good. The American version is called The Book of Eels. The European version is The Gospel of the Eels, and then I guess there's a Swedish title. It's a Swedish author. And then you got me the book that we've talked about on the air in the past. It's Walden 2.
Yeah.
And I haven't read it yet.
Well, read that. I actually think you will like it.
I'm reading a book called Once an Eagle, and it's a very long book. I'm about halfway through, and it's about an American soldier, and it's apparently required reading for leadership about soldiers. It's a really good book. If anybody's interested in the American psyche, any Europeans, I think this book describes what it means to be a man in the idealized American form. So,
well, I'm almost finished All the Light We Cannot See, the Pulitzer winner, which is also a war novel. That's very, very good book. Very good.
That's the GARP, the World According to GARP author, right? Yeah.
No, it's not. No, I read that one too. But All the Light We Cannot See is a war novel. World War II, a blind girl in France and a young engineer guy from the area that I grew up in Germany, and they meet through happenstance, etc. It's very, very, very.
It's a love story.
Well,
you're so
it's cool.
You're so romantic.
I'm a romantic scholar. I like a romantic pat on the back from my podcast co-host. I like my wife to be romantic with me. So all of these things. Is that bad? I don't think that's bad. All right, Nick, man. It was an honor this year, as it was the last year's. People, thanks for listening. Podcast, what is it called? Spotify Wrapped or whatever told me we got lots more listeners with very little new content. But apparently we're still going strong. And you're right, of course. Let's keep on doing this. Final question, Nick. What was your favorite episode this year? You have one?
Oh, hell. I don't know. See, you asked me these questions. I'm totally unprepared to answer. I don't even remember what episodes we had. I liked the editors in chief. I think we had Dorothy, Andrew, Supra. They were all great, and I'd have to say Vladimir was
fantastic.
I love Vladimir. What about you? What was your favorite podcast? So I'll say Vladimir.
Well, it's a bit biased, of course, but I did like the one with Yanis, and I get a lot of emails about the one with Yanis. I mean, that's just the one that came out recently, but
you got a note from someone saying the one with Giannis was the best podcast we ever did. You sent that
exactly, and I got another one on that again, right? So I did like that one. Geez, I don't remember the other one, but I agree. Anyway, no, I think it was good. The one, by the way, the one that actually is the most downloaded or the most listened to of all time is the one, back off tricks for getting published. So in the end, you're right. People just want to publish papers. That's the nature of the game.
Yeah.
So
all right, well, that's what we're going to talk about next year is how many different. So I talked to Gord Birch when we were in Miami, and I'm like, dude, you have to come on. And he said he'll come on. I was thinking with him and Brad because they're buddies. So we'll get them on. We'll see if Amrit wants to come on. And these are people who are really good at the top of their
really,
game.
really good.
Brilliant.
Absolutely. Yep.
And they're gonna give us advice on how to get published.
That's good. All right. That's enough of a foreclosure of what we're gonna do next year. So for now, enjoy Christmas. Don't get too fat.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, foreshadowing, not foreclosing.
All right, my brother.
All right.
Happy New Year and Christmas and
all that.